Hey, what's up, guys? It's Frankie with another video, obviously, because that's what this is. And I figured I'd just talk about something that's kind of been on my mind lately, which has been that I feel ever since I've turned 25, that the way, kind of like the way that I think to myself has been different. Like, I feel a little different about life than I did anytime before 25. It's like something kind of like started hitting me subconsciously, and those subconscious thoughts have started to surface recently. And I guess this video is going to be my attempt of speaking those thoughts. Um, and unfortunately, like, I feel like a lot of those thoughts kind of, there's like some fear involved in my life for kind of like the first time. And I don't really make actions based off of fear. I think that that's like not healthy. I think a lot of people live out of fear, and they go to school out of fear that they're not going to get a job, or they do stuff out of fear that something will go wrong. And I've never really lived out of fear. I've always kind of lived out of like abundance. Like, I've lived out of like, I want to do this because the pro of doing this is exciting to me. I've always been more of like the carrot as opposed to the stick. Like, let me do something for the excitement of it. But I don't know. I feel like ever since I've turned 25, it's almost like, I'm closer to 30 now, and there's like this stigma that I have about the age of 30. Like, that's when you should be getting your life together. And I'm closer to that than I've ever been. And there's just like certain elements about my life that I'm not necessarily happy about. And I'm almost like a little, like, I don't know if scared is the right word, but like these thoughts have been creeping up, like thoughts of doubt, like, am I on the right path? Or I've kind of been like more on myself about like messing up. And wow, this is gonna be like my least articulate video that I've ever made. But I think I have been associating a lot of ideas of doubt with the idea that I'm 25, and I've been having a lot of doubts in my life recently. Um, Particularly in relation to into my career, in terms of like what I'm doing with my life. I've always been on the pursuit of like creative fulfillment, and for the last few years I've been performing stand up, and that's been a big source of meaning in my life. But over the last year, I've turned away from stand up, and I've started writing a script for a movie. And I feel like I've stopped so many things and started so many things, and my doubts are like, well, if I keep stopping things and keep starting things and keep stopping them and starting them, am I ever gonna fully like finish something and kind of like make a living off of it? Like, I didn't go to college, I didn't. Right now I serve at a restaurant, but I don't want to do that full time. What's going to be different in my life at the age of 30? What am I going to be doing different at 30 than I am at 25? Like, it's like, well, I have to make a change. Like, something has to change. I have to finish something, or I have to be consistent enough with something to make it big enough where I can support myself and support a family eventually. Like, I'm getting to the age where like the idea of like having a family is creeping up. And how am I going to be able to have a family if and support them serving at a restaurant? I have to really dedicate myself to something and do that for a long time. And how can I do that if I keep stopping things? And I've had these thoughts at like 21, 22 and stuff like that, but it feels different when you're 25. It feels like there's more pressure when you're 25. And I don't even really like thinking like this, because, like I said, it stems out of fear, and I don't think that's like the most beneficial way of viewing things. But it's just the thought that creeps up in my head. Figured I would share that. This is also like the first time in my life, I feel like I've been doing a lot of self-improvement, and every year I could look back at my previous year and say, I'm better now than I was the year before. Every year I was always able to do that. And like, I feel like this year I can almost I feel like I can't really say that. I feel like I can't look at myself this year and say that I'm better than I was last year. It's almost like the first time in my life where I feel less strong than I have at one point before. But I am hoping that in the grand scheme of things, as I get older, I can look at years like this year and say, just because you didn't feel like you were doing better, just because you didn't feel like you were growing, doesn't mean you weren't actually growing. I'm under the, I think the most beneficial idea to have is to say, hey, just because I don't feel like I'm growing doesn't mean I'm not growing. Like, maybe just the idea of not growing, maybe just that feeling that I'm not growing is growth. Like, maybe that years like this year are necessary in the grand scheme of things to have the most growth. So anyway, yeah, I guess I'm wrapped up in my ego in the sense that like I've been overwhelmed with like the idea of Frankie and my life. And maybe the answer is to take a step back and stop worrying so much, and ask people how they're doing. Give something to somebody. Give out. Put my energy out instead of putting my energy in, instead of just inwardly thinking about myself. Maybe I'm just thinking aloud, but like, maybe it'd be better to put my energy out. And man, that's like the idea with anything creative that I've done, even with these videos. Like, I'm putting stuff out, even with stand-up or with the script. The idea is that I put stuff out, but I feel like I'm bringing a lot in too, and I don't know if it's even. Man, I don't even know if anybody could even keep up if what I'm saying makes any sense to anybody. But yeah, no, there's definitely been like self-doubt, and I don't like to have that. And I'm gonna work on changing my thoughts, because I don't know if I've spoken about this before, but like, I really believe that like thoughts are the beginning of any manifestation in life. There's from what I know, there's 3 elements to manifestation. There's thought, which is where everything starts, and there's word, and then there's action. So any thought that you have manifests itself and becomes action. It starts in here and then it happens out there. So any thoughts that you have, thoughts of self-doubt, then you start talking self-doubt, and then you start physically living life from the mindset of self-doubt. Whereas if I were to nip those thoughts in the bud and just think, abundance, not what am I doing wrong, what do I not have, but what do I have, what am I doing right? The more I focus on those thoughts, the more I start talking that sort of way, the more I start acting that sort of way. So I guess I really just need to be more mindful about the things that I'm saying to myself. I've recently created some mantras. I'm going off topic now, but I've created some mantras in my life for certain thought patterns that arise. And anytime that thought pattern arises, if I'm being mindful, whenever one of those thoughts arise, I'll repeat that mantra to myself and take 3 deep breaths. I'll make a video about that, actually. That would be like a fun video to talk about the mantras that I have for stuff like that. Anyway, those are just the thoughts that I'm thinking today. This is a very all over the place video, but that's where I am right now. I feel a little bit all over the place. Okay. That's my video. Yep. Thank you for watching. I'll have another video next Friday.